Give me a camera to flirt with, an Oscar, I deserve it. The lights, the fame, the press, this game I play it every day.
And hello everyone, it is Peter Sam the Narrow Gauge Engine here with the second of the Peter Sam Week videos, and we're going from the DVDs to the books. The Railway series is what started it all, and I paid homage to that with a big ass 2-part series where I ranked every single story. It was hell, but it was worth it and we made it through. Like with my DVD sort of ranking video yesterday, there's no real set criteria, there's no point system, it's all personal opinion, and nobody's wrong or right for a difference in their opinion. Every book is enjoyable, but these are the ones that stick out to me. And with all that said, let's jump in. Number 10, Tramway Engines. I think the beauty in Tramway Engines comes from two areas. The first area is, of course, its stories. They're fun, engaging, and beautifully illustrated. I think Ghost Train is unlike anything else in the book form of the franchise, and is absolutely a standout story. Woolly Bear may not be up to the same standard, but I think it has quite striking illustrations, so in that sense, I think it's a standout. Mavis introduces a character who becomes well known thanks to the TV series and goes on to become one of the greatest examples of consistency with characters within the franchise. And that's thanks to, well, this story, because this story birthed the character. And Toby's Tightrope is a more daring and exciting adventure, with the bridges collapse and Toby having to be rescued. All in all, it's a bunch of solid stories, and while some are better than others, there's still a clear level of quality throughout. But then there's that second area that I mentioned earlier. What is that area? Well, it's the fact that this was Wilbur Awdry's last book, his last contribution to the world that is the Railway series, and that adds an air of finality to the book. And whilst, of course, Christopher would go on to continue the world, it just wasn't the same. That magical writing style, that engaging storytelling, would go on to be not quite so magical and not quite so engaging. Tramway Engines, it really is just the last of its kind, and so I do think I cherish it more because of that, but also because it is just really good. Number 9, Toby, Trucks and Trouble. Spoilers, this is going to be the only Christopher Awdry book on the list because, well, Wilbert's books are just so much better. But I think Toby, Trucks and Trouble is the exception to that rule, because of how much passion is in it. You can really just tell how much Chris loves Toby from this book, because of how well he's written when in comparison to the other characters within other books. The other characters are quite well written in this book too, with Mavis in Mavis and the Lorry, or Percy in Bulstrode. Oh, and that's another thing, this book produced one of the most iconic non-rail characters to ever grace the franchise in Bulstrode. He got brought back in All Engines Go, has numerous toys, has a fucking ride at Thomasland that I've ridden on, and honestly, it's quite good. And like, when you consider the fact that even characters like Donald and Douglas don't get Thomasland privileges, like, that's insane to have that feat after only appearing in one story and one episode. Anyway, I think there's just always been this charming hook with this book, and you just get so enamoured by it, because I truly think this was Chris at his most inspired here, and that generally made his best work. Number 8, Gordon the Big Engine. Whilst Christopher wrote Toby very well, Wilbert seemed to have such a knack when writing for Gordon. It seemed like he was the character who had a set journey to undertake across the entire catalogue, and that is definitely thanks to Wilbert. I wouldn't be surprised if Wilbert told Chris exactly how he should continue Gordon's journey when Wilbert stopped making the books. So with a character as fleshed out as Gordon, it is of absolutely no surprise to me that the book with his name slapped on the front would do so well. I just think the flow of this one works wonders. That first story is Gordon's fall from grace, his second is him learning how to help others and basically him seeing a mirror reflection of his attitude put back onto him via James. The third story is the beginning of bonds being made and his rise as a character, and we finish with Gordon back in his prime, found right where he was at the start of the book, but with a much better attitude. Threaded through all of this is fun hijinks with Thomas, James, Henry, and of course the Queen, and that really helps. Side tangents that are quick and fun will always be beneficial to your story. Overall, there isn't much room to dislike anything here, and I think many people will agree here with me that this book is a strong one. Number 7, Edward the Blue Engine. Going to be a bit more brief with this one really, since this is just kind of the same deal as with Gordon's book. Edward was a character who was very fleshed out, and this book reflects that. Sure, Chris neglected him, but that was also because of the publishers. And the thing that elevates Edward's book above Gordon's, however, is just how much charm it possesses. I think the slowness of this one compared to the more fast-paced Gordon book really lets you see the charm of Edward's line and how he operates day to day. We also get spotlights on lesser-seen characters like Bertie, as well as Edward's crew, and our new character of Trevor gets a fair amount of visibility in his introductory story. Of course, whilst the episode of Old Iron is the better version, the book form kills it too, and Cows is even more enjoyable than it is as an episode. Again, I don't think there's all that much to dislike. Number 6, Toby the Tram Engine. I love Toby. My family loves Toby. I think my entire audience has at least somewhat of a soft spot for Toby, at least in the books and the classic series, anyway. So again, I don't think many of you will be too surprised to see that his introductory book is on the list, but unlike the 2 previous entries, I think the quality of the stories is a slight bit higher. Except for one anomaly. Whilst Toby and the Stout Gentleman is immersive as all hell, Mrs. Kindly's Christmas provides almost excess levels of wholesomeness, and Dirty Objects is fun and exciting, Thomas in Trouble is a bit too expositional for me. It's still a fun story which delves into the legal aspect of railways and how the law handles them, but for me, it never quite reached the highs that the rest of the book does. Regardless of that, I still think it deserves to be on the top 10 because of its charming characters and quaint little stories, but it has just missed out on the top 5, which is quite a shame. Number 5, The Little Old Engine. I bet you've been wondering where the Skarloey Railway books have been. Well, the ones that I consider to be in the top 10 are all here in the top 5. All of the stories in Little Old Engine are quite solid, and whilst Home at Last isn't the most exciting thing in the world, I think it works better in this book format. In the TV show, yes, the adapted episode of the same name is boring, but that's because the TV show has far less limits than a book does. The story version focuses more on character interaction, as does the book in general. In Trucks, there's great interactions between Sir Handel and Gordon, which are quite fun to see. Rock and Roll has the Duncan and Rusty dynamic, which is ever so sweet at the end, and then Little Old Twins, whilst not really having a standout dynamic, has a standout narrative. A TV crew are coming to the SKR, and the engines get to help out with the filming. I'm surprised nobody went back and adapted this story, because it's ripe in meta content, which would have been fun for Andrew Brenner to tackle in my opinion, and could have easily been moulded into a 3 Strikes Hit era type story, whilst having a unique plot. And I think it's a missed opportunity from both eras of the show. At least the other 3 stories got adapted, however, and I guess keeping that final story within the confines of a book form keeps some of the Audrey's legacy alive. Number 4, Oliver the Western Engine. Oliver's quite an enjoyable character, and despite his prominence in the show, he's weirdly only around for this book and this book alone. He fades into the background after this, which is a shame because all of his stories here are pretty enjoyable. Granted, that's only half the book, but I still think he had more potential than he ended up receiving. Resource and Sagacity, despite the lengthy title, is a fun story with some enjoyable hijinks, and Toad Stands By is such a satisfying tale of redemption and payback. Bulgy is an iconic story which paved the way for one of the most memorable non-rail vehicles in the show, and Donald's Duck is a favourite for a lot of people despite me not really being all that fond of it. I also think the illustrations are insane in this one, and they capture a more coastal branch line setting really well. Good job, Peter and Gunver. You made this already great book even greater. Number 3, Thomas the Tank Engine. Do I need to explain, really? I mean, I think it's kind of obvious. The pacing of it is brilliant, the construction of the narrative is so simple yet so fleshed out, the cast of characters is well constructed whilst being a reasonable size, and the stories themselves feed into each other extremely well. It's not like some of the other books where the stories are more segmented and flip back and forth between characters. It's solely focused on Thomas and his narrative arc, and what an arc it is! It demonstrates his growth as an individual and how that can be rewarded. As I said, I don't think this one really needs much explanation. It's entirely obvious why this book would be in my top 3. It didn't gain loads of success and spawn a franchise so big that millionaires would go broke collecting all the merchandise for nothing. Number 2, Gallant Old Engine. I think out of all of Wilbert's books, this one is the one that had the most stakes in it. We have daring battles, weathering storms, funnels being knocked off of engines, and they have to continue their journey. There's quarrels with steamrollers, and even Duncan has a moment to well be himself. I just think this feels a lot like a climax after climax of all of these things which were like hinted at in books before, just coming together to form a book of fun and exciting stories. Peter Sam damaging his funnel happened in a book prior we just talked about, and is the catalyst for Special Funnel. Rheneas being this more mysterious figure who is talked about but is never seen, but also is kind of a recurring theme in the Skarloey books, that builds up to Gallant Old Engine, the story, not the book. Both Sir Handel and Duncan's attitudes have been on display before to lesser extents in Trucks and the story Sir Handel for Sir Handel, whilst Duncan has Home at Last and Rock and Roll, and those build up into the stories Steamroller and Passengers and Polish. This book has loads of build up and all of it paid off with such good allotment of stories. This is possibly the book with the highest quality of stories, but it's not my favourite, because number 1, Duke the Lost Engine. Come on. It had to be, didn't it? Similar to Gallant Old Engine before it, there was lots of build up to this book with Peter Sam mentioning Duke previously, and the enigma surrounding his and Sir Handel's backstories. This book answers it all and was meant to be the finale to Audrey's tenure, but the publishers went and ruined it by asking for a book that would also end up making my top 10. Anyway, the selection of stories is fun, and we get the perfect amount of charm from this fascinating line. This is also a book about Duke, who is one of the best written of Audrey's characters. He's sardonic, stern and serious, but also finds joy in the misfortune of others, a lot like Toby. Toby, the prequel! That's what I think he is. Which is even weirder when you consider the other two engines are an egotistical blue engine and a cheerful jokester green engine. The subtle parallels between the Farquhar branch and Duke's old line are not lost on me. Either that or this is coincidence and Audrey should have requested Sir Handel to be orange or something. Anyway, I think this book just gives enough of the old days on Duke's line to really engage with it and be fascinated by it, and couple that with a heartbreaking ending for the mid-Sodor Railway and Duke's eventual rescue, and you have such a whimsical and almost fantasy-like book on your hands, filled with fun and engaging characters. It's the standout. It always has been and it always will be. So there we are, my 10 favourite Railway series books of the 42 that exist. Hopefully you enjoyed my thoughts and my rankings as much as I enjoyed making this video. Next time is a Railway series akin video coming tomorrow, and it also involves the hit era to some degree, so check that out when it arrives. In the meantime, I've been Peter Sam, you've been you, and I'm off to find Duke. They never found him in CGI, so guess it's up to me. Got a shovel, so I can only go where the rails go though, so this might not go well. I'll pull the Great Discovery and just jump into fucking bushes and shit. Anyway, bye-bye.